Racial inequality is a controversial issue all over the world. It has been part of history since people became civilized. Sometimes, though, we pass it off as part of the past and don't realize that it still lingers in the world today. In American history, racial inequality played a large role in revolutionizing America. The Civil War was fought to gain racial equality, and many people died fighting for what they believed. Segregation was a burden for many blacks because the end of the Civil War and the amendments added to the Constitution elevated expectations beyond reality in some respects. Ed Smith.
Racial inequality is like a disease. It spreads. It starts with people believing that they are superior to others. Other people then want to be superior as well, so they find other people to oppress. There are also different kinds of racial inequality. Back when the South was still extremely segregated, people were not against racial inequality, against African Americans, but they were against Hitler's oppression.
It's just how things are. Racial inequality comes and goes. It's a part of history and it always has been. Sure, it's not exactly a moral thing, but neither is war, and most people accept the fact that war can't be helped. Some people truly believe in it. Like Strom Thurmond once said, segregation in the South is honest, open, and above board. Of the two systems or styles of segregation, the Northern and the Southern, there is no doubt whatever in my mind which is better.
We have laws against racial inequality now, and everyone's trying to make things fair, so it's okay. The United States outlaws segregation, and the United Nations are against racial inequality as well. Besides, people will always make mistakes or choices that are not everyone agrees on. I completely agree with America did not always live up to its ideals. In fact, we often fell far short of them. But we also learned that fundamental to our national character is the drive to live out the true meaning of our creed.
During the days of segregation, there was not a place of higher learning for African Americans. They were simply not welcome in many of the traditional schools, and from this backwards policy grew the network of historical black colleges and universities. Michael N. Castle. Racial inequality is even in our education system. Many minorities cannot afford to send their children to college, even though colleges try to accept more students that are part of the minority to even out the percentages a bit. Isn't that racial inequality as well? Some students may be accepted into a college just because of their race, therefore forcing schools to have to reject other possible students who may be better candidates.
Statistically, minorities are less educated overall, but that's because they don't have the opportunities that some children do. For example, in 2005, the high school dropout rate for Caucasians was 6%. The rate for African Americans were 10.4%, and the rate for Hispanics were 22.4%. There are very promising children out there that are unable to show their full potential because they don't have the chances due to their family background. There isn't anyone to blame now, but in the past, minorities had less rights and therefore were not hired to work as often. They did not have the opportunity to create and gain wealth to pass to later generations.
Minorities just so happen to be less educated. There isn't really anything we can do about it. If they wanted to, they could get a good education by going to college, whether they choose to do it by getting scholarships, loans, or working while studying. There are many ways to make money. You just have to figure out how. This isn't racial inequality. When immigrants move, they understand that they'll be at a disadvantage.
Colleges are trying to give minorities some opportunities, right? So there's really nothing else to do. There are plenty of scholarships out there. People have done everything they can, and I believe education opportunities are out there for everyone equally.
So when did it begin in the U.S.? Even through all the efforts that have been made to create a fair and equal country, people are still not completely equal. In the past, laws favored certain types of people. Starting from then, the scales were tipped and it would take a long time for everything to become completely normal again. This is the meaning of our liberty and our creed. why men and women and children of every race and every faith can join in celebration across this magnificent mall, and why a man whose father less than 60 years ago might not have been served at a local restaurant can now stand before you to take a most sacred oath. Barack Obama.
We can't change the past, but we can decide our future. The Jim Crow laws were a big mistake, but we can make up for that by not repeating the same mistakes. In the past, colored people were not allowed to get loans, therefore unable to start businesses successfully. Many people also did not like to buy for stores run by colored people, so all they could do was manual labor, which does not make much money. Now, though, there are many intelligent people involved in the business world that are colored. Segregation never brought anyone anything except trouble. Paul Harris.
That was the way of the world then. The way of thinking is different than it was now, so it wasn't really wrong. That's just how things were. Now people are all trying to work their way up the system, and we can't help if some people are still biased. You can't change a person's way of thinking if they're not willing to change. If someone really has talent, then they will not be ignored. Even though colored people did not have the chance to accumulate wealth in the past to pass down to future generations, they have this chance now, so it's not a big deal.
Racism cannot really be solved or ended, but if everyone is aware of what is happening, it is easier to make the situation better. Racial inequality, however, is something that we can put an end to. Therefore, it is important to understand all the different opinions of racial inequality. Like how there are two sides to every story, it is the same for racial inequality and segregation. You must know both sides before making a decision. Even for segregation, there are people both for and against it.
Segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever. George C. Wallace.
There were definitely people who truly believed in segregation. They believed that they were superior to others.
Racial inequality is the gravest threat to mankind. The maximum of hatred for a minimum of reason. Abraham Joshua Heschel.
Many people were also aware of the negative effects of racial inequality and were against it. When we hear the term racial inequality, we think of the Civil War and the time period around then. But we shouldn't limit ourselves to that. Slaves are also not just in America. Even the apartheid in South Africa was not too long ago. Discrimination against people has been going on all over the world for centuries, and as people united, we have sought to create equality throughout the world.